Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We're going to go ahead and kick it off. Before I announce our special guest this morning, I want to highlight some organizational updates for you. Just a reminder that our nominations are open for our North Carolina Housing Coalition Awards. This year, each year actually, we recognize housing advocates across the state at our annual breakfast during the North Carolina Affordable Housing Conference, which this year is taking place September 5th through the 6th. If you or someone you know has gone above and beyond to advocate for affordable housing in North Carolina, make sure that you nominate them today. The deadline to submit is July 26th. We have several different categories for you to consider, and those will be linked in the call notes as well as the nomination form. And if you haven't already registered for our conference, make sure to do so. Moving on, I'm really excited. Today we have two guests from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition with us today, here to talk to us about the National Tenant Bill of Rights as well as various federal updates. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guests. We have Billy Cerullo and Kayla Laywell. Kayla Laywell is a policy analyst at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, where she works on policy related to housing supply, fair housing, tenant protections, and rural and native housing. Before she joined the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, she worked in the offices of Senator Ben Ray Lujan in D.C. and the district office of former Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small. Kayla started her career as a case manager in a rapid rehousing program in Houston and holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work and a bachelor's degree in social work from the New Mexico State University. Billy Cerullo is a housing advocacy organizer on the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's field team, and in this role, Billy helps grow the coalition's network of advocates and supports efforts to strategically engage federal policymakers on key policy priorities. Billy has been working as an organizer for almost a decade and has organized winning campaigns to change education and healthcare policies. And before joining the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, he organized multiple unionization drives as an organizer for the Laborers International Union of North America. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Yeah, thanks. Hey, Billy. Just glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off and shoot the first question to you, Kayla. At the end of June, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, along with the National Housing Law Project and Tenants Union Federation, released the National Tenants Bill of Rights. Could you talk to us a bit about that process and why this was created?
Yeah, so I heard you got a little bit of brief background last week. Great podcast, by the way. But the National Tenants Bill of Rights was created to set a baseline of tenant protections nationwide for renters all across the country. All 114 million renters in both federally subsidized housing and for those in the private rental market. And the national housing conversation has really focused on housing supply or just building new housing, and there's good reason for that. But folks have often neglected to consider the demand side too and the tenant protection side. And what we've seen is that without strong renter protections, no amount of new housing will keep renters stably housed. And we really need protections to address the power imbalance between landlords and renters. This is also building upon the over 300 tenant protections that have passed in states and localities since the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we're really building on the power of tenants organizing nationwide.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so, I love that you mentioned how a lot of focus has been on supply, which is absolutely critical, and how there's also a really important component here when we talk about protections that really overall does contribute to the stability, right, of the folks that we're trying to help. Can you talk about some of the reactions that you're seeing across the country regarding this tool and talk a little bit about how people might be able to engage with it?
Yeah, I love that you called it a tool because this is not yet legislation, although we are working towards that as soon as possible. We've gotten a really, really great response so far. We just launched the National Tenants Bill of Rights on June 25th, so not even 3 weeks ago, and we've been working to build as much support as possible. This platform is really the preeminent platform for tenants' rights. And our goal is to get as many endorsers as possible so that in 2025, with the start of the new Congress in January, we can start having members of Congress introduce the platform as legislation and get it enacted. And whether that's as one big, massive bill or piecemeal, we really need this legislation. We need this enacted as legislation. So if folks are interested in supporting and using this to build the momentum and support getting this enacted in Congress, we invite individuals, organizations, elected officials, and even candidates for elected office to endorse the National Tenants Bill of Rights at, I think I can read this over a podcast, tinyurl.com/TBOR-endorse. And I think you have notes we can put that in too. But, NLIHC, for the first time, we're asking individuals to endorse this platform too. Typically, it's just open to organizations. And we really want to show that both renters and homeowners support this. Correcting this unbalanced rental market is going to take a wide coalition and tons of support. So we invite everyone to endorse the Tenants Bill of Rights.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so in addition to, this resource and a lot of the continuous, great resources that you all are always releasing, I know that you all also keep an eye on the federal appropriations process. So is there any update or highlights from that you would like us to be aware of?
Yeah, so in the vein of tenant protections nationwide, the Federal Housing Finance Agency announced just last week the introduction of renter protections in properties that receive a federally backed mortgage. But, these policy changes will do very little to protect renters from this power imbalance between tenants and landlords. And so we're really just using this FHFA announcement last week to call more attention to the National Tenants Bill of Rights. So thank you so much for helping me do that. In addition, we are continuing to push for the strongest affordable housing and homelessness funding in Congress during this appropriation cycle. Last week, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill passed out of the House of Representatives Committee on Appropriations, and it called for, dramatic cuts to housing choice, to affordable housing funding. We've got more details in our weekly memo to members, and I know we don't have tons of time, but we're calling for folks to engage their members of Congress by emailing or calling their members' offices. And then I think very last, since we're in the heat of summer and it's hurricane season, our disaster housing recovery team is continuing to track devastating disasters and impact on affordable housing, and of course the impact of, a tenant's entire cycles of housing stability. So those are just a brief, quick few highlights, and thanks so much for giving me an extra second for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's already been really nice because a lot of the times what we're doing on this housing call is we're reading a lot of the resources, talking about a lot of the resources that you all put out. So this is actually perfect and aligns really well because I think we rely on, and then we also look to you all as our national partner for a lot of the federal highlights too. I want to make sure that I bring Billy in. For those that went to our Bringing It Home conference, you might have actually met Billy or seen Billy, or if you were in a session, you heard me give him a few shout-outs. Thank you, Billy, so much for being a part of our call today as well. I know that we really enjoy working with you. So for those that may not be familiar with how you interact with states across the country, could you talk a little bit about how you partner with organizations across the country and in your relationship with us, but also how the National Low Income Housing Coalition can be a resource for others?
Yeah. And thank you for that's quite a bit of a hype. So I hope I do it justice. Yeah, I mean, so essentially in my role, I'm kind of the main conduit, or at least I think of myself in this role as the main conduit between our organizations, our member organizations, also our member individuals in the states that are in our region. From our members to our amazing team at the coalition. And that can look like a bunch of different things. It could look to, for if there are questions around the National Tenant Bill of Rights, for example, a very concrete example is this morning, we got a question about enforcement. And so I was able to connect those folks to Kayla to talk about enforcement mechanisms in the National Tenant Bill of Rights. It could look like trainings on advocacy, on organizing. It could look like trainings on a particular policy area. So I gave a presentation a couple weeks back on the National Housing Trust Fund for our folks in Arkansas. So, I mean, essentially what my role is to make sure that our members are supported in their work and that you all have the tools that you need to be able to engage in advocacy and organizing across the state and then also on a municipal level as well. And so far, it's been really great. I think that another part of it, too, is highlighting the great work that you all are doing, especially in a very difficult political climate. So do want to, on the topic of North Carolina, do want to give a shout out to the North Carolina Coalition on Homelessness. So we actually included in our memo to members this past week an article about their client Bill of Rights through their Balance of State Lived Expertise Advisory Council. So do want to give a shout out to the work that they're doing across the state. And if you want to learn more, you can check it out in our memo.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Billy. So, Billy and Kayla, if folks want to reach out to you or engage with you, how can they do so? What's the best way to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first, you can always shoot me an email. My email is and my last name, which is CERULLO @NLIHC.org. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. And I'm always happy to chat via Zoom. I'd say 9 to 5, but also as an organizer, sort of any time will do. And, happy to be here as a resource to assist in the work that you all are doing throughout the state.
Yeah, Billy, the work never stops, right? Yeah, and same.
No.
I can be reached my email address is KLAYWELL@NLIHC.org. So it's K Laywell, my last name. And I'm getting a lot of technical feedback about the Tenants Bill of Rights, too, so feel free to send that along as well.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we could have you on, and hopefully we can have you on again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, you all. So we only have a few minutes left. I just want to highlight a few key updates and events. Of course, we will still have our housing call notes for you all to refer to, where we'll have several different links for updates for you all. Again, a reminder to check out our awards nomination form for the 2024 North Carolina Housing Coalition Awards, and make sure to register for the conference if you haven't already done so. Just want to lift up a few updates at the state level. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency recently approved more than $5.5 million in funding through their supportive housing development program for 9 affordable housing projects. This program is funded by our State Housing Trust Fund and finances emergency, transitional, and permanent housing services for special populations. So this is a big deal. On the state legislative side, yesterday we learned that Representative Jason Sain, a top Republican in the State House and senior chair of the Appropriation Committee, announced his plans to resign next month. So as we learn more and we determine what the next best steps are for us in that event, we will make sure to keep you posted. Highlighting a few events coming up on July 18th, HUD is hosting a webinar around insurance because this is a issue that is affecting everyone across the country. So this day-long event is going to focus on how rising insurance costs are impacting homeowners, renters, and communities. and what the federal government is trying to do in response. There is also going to be a quarterly update on source of income discrimination by the HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research on July 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. And last but not least, on August 9th, just a friendly reminder that our friends in the West at the Land of Sky Regional Council are hosting their second annual Western North Carolina Regional Housing Forum. Registration is $20. It will be in the lovely Flat Rock, North Carolina from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have several other resources and reports for you all to check out. I want to list up the 2024 Fair Housing Trends Report from the National Fair Housing Alliance, as well as several other pieces that are talking about the cost of addressing middle-income affordability, creating more inclusive tenant screening practices, and more. As always, if you have any questions or you would like to hear us talk about something in particular, or if you would really like to hear someone in particular serve as a guest on our call, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you next time.